Have you ever heard of lights appearing in the middle of the night, but not shining from any star in the sky? Have you ever felt that something was watching you, but you couldn't tell where it was coming from? And what if I told you that all over this planet, ordinary people, just like you and me, have recounted terrifying encounters so intense that if they're not real, then they're flawless horror movie scripts? One night in Canada, two young men stalked by an invisible entity and a massive triangular craft hovering above the roof. A couple on a beach in Florida, trapped in a space where every sound vanishes, as glowing orbs silently drift toward them in absolute silence. And across the hills of England, two young men wake up with no memory, after witnessing luminous beings digging feverishly, as if searching for something buried deep beneath the earth. No one believes them. There's no evidence, but there's one thing they all share that chills you to the bone. None of them can remember what actually happened. And maybe that's the point. Part 1: Light in the Frozen Night. A call from the empty field. If one night you see a light calling your name from the edge of the horizon, don't walk toward it. Because maybe you won't be the one who comes back. Kings Bay, Saskatchewan, Canada, May 3, 2008. The quiet land was blanketed in the mute chill of the northern spring. There was nothing but wild, untamed grasslands, scattered clusters of sparse trees, a small lake mirroring the sky, and an old wooden house standing isolated in the middle of an endless emptiness. To others, this place might seem desolate, but for the 21-year-old boy, tonight was a peaceful stop, a weekend spent with his girlfriend at her grandmother's farm. By 2 a.m., the house was silent. The grandmother had gone to sleep early. The girl, tired after a long day, had also gone to bed. Only the boy, tonight's central figure, and his best friend, who had just arrived from a nearby town, remained awake. The two decided to step outside, sit on a small wooden dock stretching into the lake, and gaze up at the stars. The sky was crystal clear. Not a single cloud, not a single sound. The stars seemed to breathe gently across the cold night. They chatted idly about school, work, the future, then suddenly fell silent, swallowed by an unfamiliar sensation. Something in the distance beyond the field wasn't right. His friend sat upright first. Do you see that? At the edge of the horizon, behind the wooden house, where the grassland stretched like an ocean, two faint lights emerged, moving slowly, silently. They didn't flicker like car lights. They drifted, as if skimming just above the ground, or gliding through a different kind of space. Maybe tractor lights? One of them tried to reason, but neither was convinced. They climbed up a nearby hill for a better view, and at the top, what they saw sent an even deeper chill into their bones. Two lights stood still in the field, no more than 300 meters from the house. The lights didn't spread out like normal illumination. They were crisp, condensed, as if they didn't shine, but simply existed. No sound, no movement, a patch of death in a living night. Could be a stalled vehicle? Someone offered, but no one believed it. They returned to the dock, hoping to leave the goosebumps behind. They had barely sat down when a blinding flash erupted from the direction they had just left, lighting the entire area like daylight, then disappearing in less than a second. Before their eyes could adjust back to the dark, the first sound arrived, the sharp crack of branches, very close, as if something was moving through the tall grass at the forest's edge. They held their breath. A flashlight was grabbed, its beam trembling as it scanned the area. The light wobbled, cutting through shrubs and tree trunks. But every time they neared the source of the sound, it moved, then reappeared behind them. Then silence. Nothing in sight, but something was clearly watching. For more than 30 minutes, they chased the sound around the farm, but never caught up. Whether they ran silently or screamed, the noises evaded them with intent, as if playing cat and mouse. Eventually, one of them, the narrator, stood at the edge of the backyard and shouted, "If you can hear me, make a sound." Not even a second later, a loud crack burst from the tree line. His skin crawled. "I'm done. We're being watched." They tried one last test, a sudden sprint in one direction, followed by a sharp veer in another, hoping to flush something out. But no, the sound still followed, still changed direction in sync with them, still never revealed itself. Now terrified, they sprinted back toward the house, circling the wooden veranda surrounding it, and then a figure stood in the walkway. In the dim light, the being was nearly 2 meters tall, with a grotesquely large head, arms hanging down to its thighs, completely unclothed, skin gray and cold like steel, and no face. Or at least, none they could discern. They froze, paralyzed for 3 seconds. Then, a strange moaning sound came from behind them. They turned, saw nothing. Just pitch black hallway shadows. They turned back, the entity was gone. Only an empty path remained, as if no one had stood there at all. Unable to take it any longer, they ran to the front door, hands shaking. One of them collapsed onto the steps. The shock overwhelmed him, his heartbeat out of control. The other crouched beside him, trying to calm him. "We have to get inside. Lock the door, now." But when he looked up, his blood froze. On the roof, a massive dark figure loomed, watching them. It didn't move, didn't make a sound. It simply stood, a statue of blackness etched against the sky. Then, in a blink, it vanished, darting behind the roof at terrifying speed. They bolted around to the back of the house, saw nothing. But when they looked up, they saw it. A massive black triangle, nearly 40 meters long, hovered silently above them. Each corner emitted a brilliant white light, like 3 unblinking eyes. There was no sound, no air displacement, only a subtle vibration beneath the ground, as if space itself was being compressed. Then, a brilliant light swept across the yard, stunning them. The craft veered south and disappeared as fast as it had arrived. Only one thing remained. The choking stench of burning sulfur, stinging their noses and lingering across the backyard. That night, they couldn't sleep. But the real nightmare came after. They began to dream. The same dreams. Blinding white rooms, like hospitals, the feeling of being restrained, unable to move, lights scorching their eyes, tall figures surrounding them, moving in unnatural ways, a humming sound, electric, synthetic. And in the dream, the smell of sulfur returned, thick in the air. When they woke, the smell was still in their room, unexplainable. They didn't dare tell anyone, not for many years. Eventually, the story was recorded and entered into the archives of the most inexplicable encounters in North America. Why them? Why that night? And most importantly, what truly happened after that light? Maybe only the stars over Kings Bay still remember. Part 2: Silence on the beach. The moment the world stood still. When you can no longer hear the waves, the wind, or any sound at all, then maybe the world is no longer functioning the way you thought it did. Florida, USA, late 1993, Ponte Vedra Beach. A peaceful coastal town, famous for its endless white sands, rolling dunes like frozen waves, and narrow trails weaving through to the eastern shore. A beloved retreat for couples, nature lovers, and those seeking a quiet evening beneath the stars. That night, the sky was perfectly clear. Not a single cloud, not a breeze. The air was utterly still. The clock struck 2 a.m. A young couple, a man and a woman in their early 20s, walked hand in hand along the soft sandy path to the beach. They shared soft laughter, whispered things only lovers understand, their hearts light as sea breeze, unaware of what was waiting ahead. As they reached the crest of a large dune, from the shallow ravine below leading into a marsh, they spotted flickering lights, like flashlights in the dark. At the same time, giggling and whispering echoed from the trees, as if someone was playing hide and seek in the midnight shadows. "Kids, at 2 a.m.? The girl whispered. "Seems like it," the guy replied, though his eyes betrayed doubt. They kept walking toward the beach, stepping across damp sand left behind by the falling tide. The sky opened up before them, lit brilliantly by winter stars. The ocean breeze brushed through their hair, carrying a familiar salty chill and a sense of life. They sat atop the highest dune, a perfect vantage point. No words were exchanged, just the sky, the sea, and two hearts beating in sync. Then, as if an invisible hand had reached out and turned down the volume of the world, all sound vanished. No wind, no waves. The chirping of insects seemed strangled in their throats. No rustling, no breathing. The young man froze. The girl looked at him, eyes full of unease. "Do you hear anything?" He didn't answer, just turned his head toward the sandy path. Then, all at once, he stood up. "We have to go." They ran down the beach. Every step felt like stepping on frozen glass, silent, weightless, disconnected from the world. There was no sign they existed in a real space anymore. Both began to feel it. They were being watched. It was as if hundreds of invisible eyes were tracking their every movement, from behind, from above, or worse, from inside them. They quickened their pace. No more romance, no more talk. The night had turned into a silent prison, and they were two trapped souls in a frozen timeline. Then, it arrived. A burst of intense light exploded behind them, blinding white, like daylight, consuming everything in their field of vision. As they turned back, they saw a massive, glowing, circular object hovering just about 70 meters away. It wasn't flying, it was suspended, like it was hanging by an invisible thread from the sky. The light wasn't emitting, it was as if it was being light. A brightness not of this world. They were speechless, frozen like statues. The air around them remained absolutely silent. Then, they realized, it wasn't just one object. It was three glowing spheres, moving together in a perfect triangle formation, synchronized so precisely that only machines, or an intelligence far beyond human, could achieve it. No sound, no vibration, only light. And then, in the blink of an eye, everything vanished. Darkness flooded back like a tidal wave. The sound of waves returned. The wind roared in their ears. Insects chirped again, sowing fear like they'd never been silent. The world resumed. They stood there, trembling, as if they had just been returned from another dimension. No one spoke, no one cried, only their hearts pounding wildly, reminding them they were still alive. They didn't know what had just happened. No one explained. When they got home, no one believed them. No video, no evidence, only a cold memory etched into their minds. Was it truly just three glowing orbs? Or something else entirely, something humanity had no name for? And what about the children in the dunes? Why did they appear right before the event? Were they related, or were they the ones behind it? But perhaps the most terrifying detail of all was that everything happened in absolute silence. As if the world had paused for them, then restarted once the task was done. This phenomenon would later be referred to by UFO researchers as the dose effect, l'effet dose, the moment where time, sound, and perception are severed from reality. No one knows why it happens. No one knows how many have experienced it, but those who have never forget what it felt like. And once you've stepped into the zone of silence, you'll never be certain if you ever really left. Part 3: Light on the Highland. Memory erased in sleep. Sometimes, you don't wake up from a dream, because the truth is, you never went to sleep. Lake District, United Kingdom, night of June 19, 1997. The Lake region in northwest England, where nature still holds onto its wild and unspoiled essence. Rolling mountains cast shadows over winding valleys. Ancient forests whisper with each passing breeze. And endless green fields stretch all the way to the horizon, where humans sometimes believe they're the only ones left. That night, the sky had no moon, but was full of stars. Inside an old hatchback parked on a hillside, two young men, Shun and Simon, sat in the front seats, each holding a can of beer, gazing toward the dark horizon where the hill descended into vast nothingness. They didn't want to spend money on an official campsite, so they chose a remote field, far enough from town to make sure that no one would bother them, and no one would hear anything if something went wrong. Shun stared out through the windshield, about to share an old story when he suddenly stopped. His eyes locked on a patch of dark sky in front of them. "Simon, look at that." Both turned their attention toward the hill, where two glowing orbs floated in midair, moving gently, as if completely unaffected by gravity. No sound, no flickering, just a quiet, pale blue light, shining straight down as though searching for something. "Are those car lights?" Simon asked, but then shook his head. There was no road there, no engine noise, and no reason for light to be drifting midair like that. Suddenly, the two orbs flashed and disappeared, and in that split second, from within the darkness, two figures emerged, as if they had always been there, just waiting to be switched on from behind the curtain of reality. They were tall, extremely tall, thin like massive matchsticks, glowing from within, as if fluorescent tubes ran through their bodies. But what held the young men's gaze wasn't just their appearance, it was their behavior. They were searching. The two beings moved with long strides, hunched over, their arms sweeping the ground like they were digging or scanning. Every movement was perfectly synchronized, stopping together, turning together, shifting direction together, as if one single intelligence controlled them both. "What are they looking for?" Shun muttered, a chill running down his spine. They sat frozen inside the car, no talking, barely breathing, only the ticking of a metal watch and the pounding of their own hearts filled the silence. Shun, always the bolder one, reached for the car door. "Are you crazy?" Simon grabbed his arm. "We don't know what those things are." Shun nodded faintly, reluctantly pulling back, then he turned on the headlights. The beams cut through the darkness, but didn't reach the beings. The distance was too far, and strangely, they didn't react. Even under the light, they continued digging, as if no one was watching. "All right, let's just go," Simon pleaded. Shun nodded, turned the key. The engine started, the car began to reverse. But then, Shun stopped. "No, we can't. We're witnessing something no one else has ever seen. We can't leave now." He turned the car off. And just then, a pickup truck appeared in the rearview mirror. It sped toward them from behind, no headlights on, moving like a ghost. In the bed of the truck sat a group of people, clinging to the rails. They didn't look at Shun or Simon. Their eyes were locked on the two beings. The truck didn't slow down. It raced directly into the field, as if it knew exactly where it was going. Shun and Simon turned instinctively to follow it with their eyes. And then, darkness consumed everything. When they opened their eyes, it was morning. The clock read 9 a.m. They were still in the car, just as they had been. No signs of having moved. No beings, no pickup truck, no lights, nothing, except the cold emptiness of memory. "What happened last night?" Shun asked, his voice hoarse. Simon looked at the dashboard quietly. "We don't remember. Nothing after the truck arrived." They stepped out of the car and walked into the field. Everything was just as it had been the night before. No tire tracks, no disturbed earth, no evidence that anyone had ever been there. But inside their minds, the fear was still intact. In the weeks that followed, both began having strange dreams. Not nightmares, but disjointed fragments, blinding light, a cold metallic room, the sensation of being restrained, and a sound like thousands of voices whispering all at once. Every time they woke up, they felt a massive void in their consciousness, as if someone had removed a part of their memory. No one believed them. No news reports about a pickup truck. No mention of any disturbed field. And those two young men, now grown, still have no idea what really happened during the time they lost. But one thing they do know for certain. If you see lights hovering over a lonely hill, do not approach. Because that light doesn't just shine. It swallows you. Part 4: The Hidden Links. Memory severed. Reality distorted. It's not that they can't remember what happened. It's that someone decided they're not allowed to. Sometimes, strange stories don't exist in isolation. They aren't standalone phenomena, random encounters between human and something else. They are fragments, disconnected clues within a larger, complex chain, scattered across time, space, and human consciousness. But what if all these encounters, from the fields of Kings Bay, the beach in Florida, to the hills of the Lake District, are merely cross-sections of a single entity acting upon humanity? Pushpin point of convergence number 1. Absolute silence, the dose effect. All three stories share a chilling moment. All sound vanishes. At the Florida beach, the wind stopped blowing, waves ceased to crash, insects fell silent, a vacuum of sound. At the Canadian farm, a blinding flash was followed by a prolonged hush, broken only by strange footsteps. At the Lake District, two men sat in such eerie stillness they could hear their own blood pulsing, right before losing consciousness. This phenomenon has been dubbed by UFO researchers as the dose effect, a moment where reality is unplugged. Like someone pressed pause on the physical world. And the most terrifying theory? This isn't a side effect, it's a precondition for some external technology to function. It only occurs during a deliberate intervention from outside the system. Pushpin point of convergence number 2. Collective amnesia, blank slate protocol. In part 3, Shun and Simon didn't simply doze off, they experienced a sudden disconnection from consciousness. Like being unplugged from the mind. Then rebooted hours later. No pain, no panic, just blankness. UFO witnesses have described this in various ways. Being pulled into a black hole. Falling asleep in broad daylight. Or waking up somewhere else with no idea how they got there. Experts call this the blank slate protocol, an unofficial term describing memory erasure or timeline reset technology. The most dangerous part? You don't know your memory was erased. Pushpin point of convergence number 3. The sulfur smell, extraterrestrial chemistry? The Canadian story referenced a lingering sulfur smell after the craft departed, one that even appeared in the bedroom days later. This is not uncommon. Across hundreds of UFO reports since the 1970s, the smell of sulfur, or burnt electricity, often accompanies these events. Some scientists suggest it's the byproduct of an undiscovered thermochemical reaction, possibly linked to non-ion propulsion systems far beyond human physics. Others theorize that it isn't a material smell at all, but a cognitive trigger, a kind of imprint designed to ensure you never forget, even if your memories are removed. Pushpin point of convergence number 4. The black triangle phenomenon. In both part 1 and part 2, the objects witnessed were massive, triangular crafts, flying silently, with bright lights at each corner. The black triangle is one of the most consistently reported UFO shapes in the last 30 years. Its characteristics include silent flight, ability to hover motionless, diagonal or geometric flight paths, triangular, grid-like, often seen in remote regions, but occasionally spotted over major cities without being noticed. Some U.S. defense analysts believe these are part of black-budget aerospace projects, built with reverse-engineered alien technology recovered from past crashes. But skeptics raise a disturbing question. If this is human tech, why does it appear on every continent, across decades, described identically by people who have never met? Pushpin point of convergence number 5. Children, thin beings, and inner light. Each story contains similar entities. Tall, thin beings, taller than humans, faceless, moving with mechanical precision, glowing from within, as if their bodies were semi-translucent, appearing before or after the light phenomena, then vanishing without a trace. In the Florida case, they were initially mistaken for children playing at night, a chilling detail. Because in many abduction accounts, experiencers describe seeing children with emotionless eyes, or small figures that weren't quite human. The most disturbing part? These are often the first forms used by non-human intelligences to approach people. A kind of perceptual camouflage. Pushpin the final theory, biological experiments on humans. The most horrifying, and least discussed, theory is this. These events are not contact. They're experiments. A form of neural testing, observing human reactions to surveillance, isolation, memory loss. A limit test on human perception, as if we are lab rats in a cosmic facility. A simulation of extreme emotions, fear, confusion, helplessness, meant to collect biofeedback data. In other words, it's not that you saw them, it's that they were watching you react. Puzzle piece. So, is there a link between the three events? Yes. They did not happen at the same time, in the same country, or to the same people, but same time of night, around 2 a.m. Same setting, remote, sparsely populated areas. Same types of objects and entities. Same phenomena, loss of sound, memory gaps, sulfur odor, intense light. And most notably, no physical evidence left behind. Brain. But why is there no evidence? One researcher answered it with a single sentence. They don't want you to remember, and they don't want you to prove it. Because true control doesn't lie in physical confinement. It lies in making you doubt your own memory. Part 5: The Dark Observer. THESCRY files and programmed memory. It's not that they're hiding secrets, it's that they're rewriting how we remember them. January 22, 2024, Reykjavik, Iceland. An anonymous email was sent to 9 independent journalists across 3 continents. It contained a single line. SCRY exists. Memory is code. We've all been rewritten. Attached was a compressed file, triple encrypted, titled SCRY_prime_core_v47, DAT. Only one person managed to decrypt the file. Her name was Mira L. Cross, a freelance investigator who had previously collaborated with several international organizations but had disappeared from the media space after 2019. Within 24 hours, Mira released a 17-minute video on a decentralized platform. No logo, no username, just a title. The Man in the Grid. Why you can't remember what you were never allowed to know. The video opens with an image of a man sitting in the shadows. His face is blurred, but his eyes gleam faintly with each subtle movement, as if he's watching the viewer in return. My name is R, but it doesn't matter who I am. What matters is this. Most of your memories didn't come from experience, they came from algorithms. He spoke about a classified project called SCRY, short for Synthetic Cognitive Rewriting Yard. According to R, this project was initiated after the Phoenix blackout in 1997, a global-scale electromagnetic disruption blamed on solar activity. In truth, it was the first population-wide test run of the blank slate protocol. SCRY wasn't just a data collection system. It was a non-biological cognitive network, fueled by memories that had been erased, altered, or completely replaced across millions of people, through a method known as the NEPHIL protocol. Neuro-encoded phantom heuristic for induced looping. If you've ever seen a strange light but can't recall where it came from. If you've ever felt like you've been somewhere, but there's no proof you were ever there. If you've ever woken up with an unnameable fear and fragmented images in your mind, then chances are, you are one of the nodes SCRY has accessed. Later in the video, Mira overlays material extracted from the internal servers of an unnamed organization, screenshots of virtual neural mapping, real-time memory region grids, and a particularly chilling sequence labeled Live SCRY View. Endoscopic cameras, point-of-view footage from inside the human eye, and streams of code automatically tagging data as emotional calibration, reality deviation, and loop reinforcement. Blank, underscore, blank. Round pushpin. The most shocking part came at the end, when R delivered a final statement. Every time you forget something, it's not because you forgot. A patch was applied. You don't live outside the system. You are part of it, labeled, indexed, and monitored. SCRY doesn't watch you through a camera. It watches you from within. Blank. blank. After the video spread, witnesses from around the world began connecting their strange memories to the revelations in the video. The inexplicable sulfur smell, untraceable lost time, and hazy recollections of glowing forms that couldn't be named. A woman from Switzerland wrote, "I don't know who Mira is, but I know what she described happened to me in 2003. Deep in the woods, I remember screaming, but no sound came out." A former Brazilian Air Force signal engineer claimed he once worked on constructing a wide-spectrum light reception station under the guise of atmospheric research, yet later, none of his co-workers remembered ever working there. Blank. Brain. The question is no longer, who are they? The real question is, if there is a system powerful enough to rewrite human memory, then how can you be sure that you are still intact? Part 6 Reality Window. Corrupted Data and the Awakened. If even 10% of what he said is true, then the world we live in is a directed stage, and we are just actors unaware that we're being rewritten. The world had forgotten Jason Sands. The government erased his name from military records. Digital platforms blocked all searches related to Quartz Mountain, Tenium, or the Legacy program. His family received a falsified death notice, listing the cause as a training accident, but there was no body, no funeral, only emptiness, as if Jason had never existed. But for Jason, that was the moment he began to truly exist. In the winter of 2023, Jason went into hiding in an abandoned wooden cabin in northern New Mexico. Near the Arizona border, no electronic devices, no signal. Each night, he rewrote his memories by hand, black ink journal entries, riddled with distortions, repetitions, contradictions. But within the contradictions, Jason discovered anomalous voids, segments not forgotten, but overwritten. He no longer tried to remember. He tried to find out who had written over him. On November 14th, Jason discovered a copy of a parasitic neural mapping schematic, the same structure used by the SCRY project to interface with human consciousness. This map didn't record what you remember, it stored what the system wanted you to remember. He uncovered something chilling. The minor logic flaws in everyday life were actually signs of corrupted memory logs. A scar you don't know the origin of. A familiar road that suddenly feels unfamiliar. A once close friend, whom no one else remembers ever existed. Then one night, as snow gently fell and Jason was journaling his memory of the final training session, all the lights in the cabin went dark. No explosions, no regional blackout, just his cabin. In the darkness, Jason stepped outside, and in the western sky, a rip of light opened across space. This wasn't normal light. It didn't shine outward. It didn't radiate. It was like a tear in the fabric of space itself, inside it. Something that human vision couldn't comprehend. From that fissure, a stream of data fell to the earth, not in sound or image, but in concepts. Jason received an information packet, though he didn't know where it came from, or if it was real. All he knew was that, the moment it touched his mind, a command appeared like code. You are outside your update window. And in that moment, Jason saw the world as a grid, as if everything around him was wrapped in data overlays. Trees swayed according to code. The ground had version numbers. People had timestamps. He was no longer in the world. He had escaped the simulation. Jason never returned to the cabin. He began documenting everything by hand, on film, using analog tools, the only formats that couldn't be remotely altered. A week later, a 112-page manuscript appeared on a decentralized network, titled Reality Window 001 How to See the Code. Inside, Jason declared, SCRY doesn't just rewrite memory, it rewrites reality. There is a non-biological layer of observation always active, not through cameras, but through intrinsic logic embedded in human cognition. When you begin to question your own memory, it means you're close to the exit. Round pushpin. The most shocking part was the final diagram, hand-drawn, illustrating a multidimensional spiral, with each layer representing a level of licensed memory. At the center, a single black point labeled uncoded access, no input, no return. Jason called it the reality window, a zone outside all systems. Unwritable, untrackable, unmemorable, because it was never recorded. It can only be experienced. And Jason? After publishing the manuscript, he vanished. Completely. No signal, no image, no trace. But some say, on snowy nights in the highlands, a thin slit of light can still be seen, like a cut between two layers of reality. And if you're aware enough, you'll feel the light watching you back. Epilogue: The world after the rip. No one knows where Jason Sands is. But since the night that slit of light appeared over the highlands, reports of reality glitches have increased globally. Clocks freezing in magnetic dead zones. People vanishing for split seconds in surveillance footage. Conversations being interrupted by words no one actually spoke. A child in Sweden drew a swirling black spiral with a pencil, whispering, "Uncle Jason is here, inside the nothing." A man in Argentina, in a trance, wrote the same sentence 300 times. The real world is what we're never allowed to forget, because we were never allowed to see it. In a world where memory can be programmed, what's your final line of truth? 3 lights, 3 doors, 3 episodes of memory loss disguised as confusion. Then one man awakens, not to remember, but to see through what was never named. If reality is just a coding, then the light doesn't come to illuminate. It comes to ask the opposite. Have you ever truly seen? And if one day, you see that light in your dream, where time is no longer linear, and logic begins to break apart, pause. The voice drops, like a warning. Don't wake up too soon. You may be standing before the reality window. If you still remember who you are, leave a trace. We will meet again, not here, but in the next layer of code. Subscribe. Because in the next chapter, connection will no longer require words, and silence will become the new network.